Hi, class. We kind of ended our class last week abruptly before I could really talk to you at any length about something I wanted to prior to you looking at the materials for next week. And that is, I kind of left class ending on a reference to 9/11 and how comedy can help us deal with traumatic events and how our present pandemic crisis might be similar or different. And my question to you is just that I wanted you to think about like what kind of comedy do you find yourself drawn to now in the midst of this and what that might be like. And then in this unit, in both units this week actually, you're looking at materials that are about comedy and the pandemic and thinking about how those work and what those are about and what might be different about them. So I wanted just to look at you at something specific with you to think about some different ways that comedy is used or has been used. So the case that I wanted to examine is The Onion, which is a satirical. It actually started out as a newspaper, an actual newspaper that you could pick up. It started out in Madison, Wisconsin, and then all over the place. And then around 2000, they started going online and getting a much broader distribution. But on September 11th, they were still an actual newspaper that you could pick up in cities, usually college towns, and they also had an online component. And what you see here is the first page, the front page of that newspaper, the edition that they put out on September 27th. So they actually took a couple weeks off after September 11th, and then they published this issue. And September 11th, at that period of time, there was everything shut down in terms of the talk shows, the comedy shows on TV. It just seemed inappropriate to and impossible on American television to kind of be funny in the same way. It was such a traumatic event. So when The Onion published this, it was an event, and for some of us, really pleasing and comforting. And yet, other people would just say, no, you can't, there's nothing funny about September 11th. How can you produce comedy about September 11th? That's just disrespectful. And my point in sharing this with you is to think about how actually comedy isn't just about laughing at people or laughing at events. It's not a hurtful gesture. It can be a much more complex thing, and in fact, many different things. So here's the cover. And I want us to just look at a couple different ways that it essentially tries to find humor in 9/11, which may or may not be about laughing out loud. And in fact, I'd say most of them aren't about laughing out loud, but instead are getting at the complex feeling and even drawing out some ambiguities between good versus evil and what had just happened. The other thing to think about is historically, you can go back at something like this and it gives us is evidence of what was going on in the country and how people were trying to deal with those events. I just realized that even in telling you that, geez, TV and comedy shut down for a couple of weeks, that was what happened, and it might be something that we lose sight of and don't remember and can seem very strange from what we're in the midst of right now, which isn't like that. Okay, so a couple of things I want to point out. I'm actually going to go to its current online. This is, like I said, a photo of the front page from when it came out. I'm going to show you the online version that you can still have access to, so I can read to you it in detail. But as you can see, this is a parody, right? We'll talk about parody in more detail later in the semester. But a parody, it looks like something else, right? And then it's making fun of that by looking like it. So this looks like an actual newspaper or a news magazine. And the pictures are very serious pictures. There's nothing funny about any of these pictures, possibly with the exception of this graphic here in the center. I'm going to switch slides here so you can just see it. I want to make this really big because this might be my favorite part of the whole thing. This graphic that they made says, "Holy fucking shit, attack on America." And that in itself, I think, at the crux tells us, what comedy can do in terms of providing a kind of release. There's nothing inaccurate about this. Rather than playing around with what people feel about what's going on, this is all about outrage, shock, not knowing what's going on, and feeling like you're in the crosshairs all of a sudden. Holy fucking shit. Which, of course, no actual serious news channel or newspaper would put holy fucking shit in the title, but a comedy one would. And that is a sign to us, of course, of there's some things comedy can do that serious media cannot do. So, if I go back here, so you can see that this is in the midst of an article, and the title, the headline is U.S. vows to defeat whoever it is we're at war with. And so what you get just in that headline is a sense of that contradiction between wanting to be forceful in defeat, but not really being sure who that is or what it means, right? Those contradictory feelings of not knowing what to do. There's something else here on the front page too, down at the bottom in this gray area. This is like what you might get a human interest story in the news, right? Not knowing what else to do, woman bakes American flag cake, right? And this article starts out, feeling helpless in the wake of the horrible September 11th terrorist attacks that killed thousands. Christine Peterson baked a cake and decorated it like an American flag on Monday. I had to do something to force myself away from the TV, said Pearson, carefully laying rows of strawberry slices on the white fudge frosting covered cake. I think it's wrong to look at that and think, oh, this is making fun of someone for baking a cake. It's not doing that. It's expressing a general feeling of not knowing what to do that many Americans had and yet wanted to do something, right? It's not making fun of her. It's expressing a shared feeling. Now, let's see. What else do we have here? One that I want to pay some more attention to is this other front page article, Hijackers Surprised to Find Selves in Hell. And I think this is illustrative of a couple of different things. There is a component of it that's laughing at someone from a position of superiority. And in this case, I would suggest a very warranted position of superiority. And then also a sense of relief of being able to just get this stuff off our chest, right? Not personally by writing something or doing anything, but just reading and let someone express something that seems to say something that we're feeling, right? Okay, so I'm going to switch over now. This is how you can find the article now. And it's a little disoriented. So this is the live website for theonion.com, and this is the actual article that ran, and you can see it even has the date, 9/26/01. The funny thing is, if that looked like a newspaper from 2001, this looks like an online newspaper from 2020. But the problem is that, like, when you scroll through, they have these automatic articles that pop up like this that they're from today. So you'll see stuff that's like from, like, I just saw something about the Democratic convention. There you go, Milwaukee. It's jumping back and forward in time. It's not consistent. So you can't, like, go to it and look like I'm laughing at what I'm seeing. It as an historical document the way you can the other stuff. You have to be more certain what you're looking at is all I'm trying to say. So I have to read this to you. So this is supposedly from the perspective of the hijackers now that they are in hell. I was promised I would spend eternity in paradise being fed honey cakes by 67 virgins in a tree-lined garden. If only I would fly the airplane into one of the Twin Towers, said Mohammed Atta, one of the hijackers of American Airlines Flight 11, between attempts to vomit up the wasps, hornets, and live coals infesting his stomach. But instead, I am fed the boiling feces of traitors by malicious, laughing Ifrit. Is this to be my award for destroying the enemies of my faith? The rest of Atta's words turned into raw-throated shrieks as a tusked, asp-tongued demon burst his eyeballs and drank the fluid that ran down his face. So, on the one hand, I think this is, if it is funny, if you find it funny, it's a comedy of relief. This is a real person who helped fly the planes into the Twin Towers on September 11th, and now we're hearing a hyperbolic, horrible treatment that he's getting instead of ending up in heaven like he had been promised, he thought, right? And the other thing is that I think you see here a comic strategy of just extreme and very detailed exaggeration to the point where it becomes funny how horrible these things are. And if you read through the rest of it, you'll get some more of this stuff that's like just poetic in its horribleness and its violence. I'm not going to even read any more of it to you. Let's see. And then this is the one I already talked about, the cover story that is about U.S. vows to defeat whoever it is we're at war with. And the I won't dwell on this one, but it says, flanked by Condoleezza Rice and Don Rumsfeld, President Bush pledges to exact revenge just as soon as we know who we're exactly revenging against and where they are. So none of that, this piece, I don't think at all is a comedy of relief in the same sense of the previous one. I think it's more just about showing us, what comedy can do to portray a situation in ways that just regular, sober discourse might not be able to. So I encourage you to go to theonion.com and look at what's there right now, what they have about the pandemic or the presidential race or what have you, but particularly the pandemic. I'm interested about that. How do they use humor or use comedy or use parody to find something to say about the pandemic? What is it about? Because I think ultimately The Onion and this issue about 9/11 is all about just finding community in a time of crisis and looking for those things that might unite us, whether they're a feeling of not knowing what to do, like the woman making the cake, or just like this profound anger and frustration that human beings could do this, and therefore it feels good to read about all the horrible things happening to the hijackers, or just this sense of frustration. Holy fucking shit. There's cussing in my classes. This may or may not be a high point. I can't promise you. Bye.